In what could be a pretty explosive decision, as well as a telling indictment against the US, especially when it comes to the issue of LGBTQ rights, a federal judge in Canada has temporarily blocked the deportation of a non binary American citizen over fears of persecution under the Trump administration. Wow. Angel Jenkel, a 24-year-old non binary American citizen who came to Ontario from Minnesota as a visitor in 2022, was set to be deported after failing to obtain documentation to remain in the country with their fiancé. Following a pre-removal risk assessment, an immigration officer had determined that deportation did not put Jenko at risk of persecution or serious harm. However, Jenko's lawyer, Adrienne Smith of Smith Immigration Law, successfully argued that in light of the current political considerations going on in the United States, the political climate, Jenko had valid concerns over their safety. Justice Julie Blackhawk agreed with the argument from Jenko's lawyer, calling the previous risk assessment from the immigration officers, to be flawed and unreasonable, saying, quote, the officer had failed to consider recent evidence of the conditions that may have supported a reasonable fear of persecution. Now, Justice Blackhawk has ordered that Jenko's deportation be paused while their case is reviewed. This is pretty huge. It's a big, big deal. Jenko, who again identifies as non-binary and gender fluid, said that the current political climate in the United States is quote-unquote scary, and that they fear being targeted for their identity, especially in southern states where much of their family happens to live. In fact, they said, quote, no matter what I do, I look trans. People read me that way, they told the Globe and Mail. Okay, so now, obviously, transgender people have been targeted in this country. Okay, if you do not conform to the gender binary, this regime is showing that they will come after you. They do not believe that you are a human being. They want to erase anyone who is not specifically in that gender binary. Okay, advocates are saying, and they're correct, that the Trump administration their policies have created a hostile environment for trans and non-binary people. Okay, the entire LGBTQ community is at risk here. An immigration lawyer, Sarah McHale, said this is an acknowledgement that these changes are serious. This is something that has material effect on trans and non-binary individuals. So, non-binary people tend to get left out a lot of these conversations, but in reality, they're just as much at risk as any other members of the LGBTQ community. And of course, the people who are especially at risk, are trans women who have been, again, maligned, targeted, called, groomers and all sorts of horrific slurs against them for just being themselves. And so, yes, they have a target on their back from this administration, which went super, super anti-trans, especially during the election, but even afterwards, especially afterwards with all their policies. And they haven't really found allies in the Democratic Party, which should be on their side. But you have seen a lot of people, Gavin Newsom is a good example of that, throwing trans people under the bus, agreeing with the right wing on anti-trans policies and issues. And so, yes, even in places where you would think that LGBTQ members would be safe, like states like California, you have people like Newsom that are saying, actually, no, you're not safe here. It's no wonder that they want to stay in Canada, where it's better there. And I'm not saying Canada is a perfect place. They do have issues. Ask someone who lives in Canada, and they'll be honest with you. No country's perfect, right? But it's better there than it is here, certainly. And so that's kind of the problem, okay? Now, Canadian LGBTQ rights advocate Gemma Hickey applauded this move, however, saying, I think it's precedent setting. This ruling will force people to pause and reflect just how dangerous it is for marginalized people there. Jenko's legal team says that the ruling could also open the door for other LGBTQ Americans facing similar threats under current U.S. policies to seek refuge in Canada. And so that is, again, really, really huge. If we have a situation where you have a large group of people who are feeling persecuted, being persecuted, seeking refuge in Canada as a result of the Trump policies, I mean, we haven't seen that before. Because, look, I remember, like, seeing reports, oh, yes, people fleeing to the United States to avoid persecution based on their gender or their sexual orientation. And now we have become the country that is so cruel to LGBTQ people that you have our citizens now saying, I can't go back there. I can't go back to America, to the United States, because of persecution from the government. So, I mean, that is just, in such a short amount of time, we have seen such a backslide on these fundamental rights to be your own person, the fundamental rights to be trans, to be non-binary, to identify who you are. And it's just so disgusting to see how far we've gone back in just this short amount of time. I hope that they are successful in being able to stay in Canada, that they are not sent back here. Because again, I do fear for their safety, and I fear for the safety of my trans friends, brothers, sisters, and everyone in between, having to deal with this extremely bigoted and cruel administration, a bigoted and cruel regime that we are now, unfortunately, having to live under. And I am afraid that so many of those people who are stuck here might not survive to see the end of this presidency, the end of this regime. And so that is one of the reasons why, if there is a safe place for them to go, I hope that they're able to go there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.